Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gathering Offering, and we have a caller on the line, and it's one of my favorite fans, one of the guys that really likes me a lot. So, would you like to come on the air, Keith? Are you there, Keith?
Yes, Jerry, you've butchered it again. Romans 11, verse 1. And if God cast away his people, God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. God hath not cast away his people. Paul was of the house of Judah, which would make him a Jew because he was an Israelite of the house of Judah.
Oh, he says he's of the tribe of Benjamin right there.
Well, Benjamin was part of the house of Judah.
Oh, okay. So he couldn't understand the difference between Judah and Benjamin.
Oh, because you don't understand the Bible.
Oh, I don't understand the Bible.
You called me a liar for telling you on the air that you said to me that Paul's a false apostle. Now you've just admitted it tonight, and yet you called
I did not ever say that. You ought to go back to the archives. I said and I kept the conversation strictly about Paul. Peter.
You can say Caractacus, right?
And on top of it, now you know for a fact that I know that Paul is the false prophet, and he is a Pharisee. And how do you explain to me, Keith, that the Christ says all Pharisees never go to heaven? Explain that to me.
Well, let me explain something.
No, answer that question, please. How do you explain that Pharisees never go to heaven? Please explain.
You idiot! He repented. Have you ever heard of repent?
When did the word repent come into and grafting in? When did that come in?
Read about
By Paul, correct?
To Damascus. You never read about his conversion.
Oh, he converted because the Christ said he was going to the Father and you shouldn't see him again, and yet Paul says he saw the Christ.
You're the most unbiblical, anti-Christ person. And you know what? Revelation 2 doesn't say anything about Paul being a false apostle.
Oh, no, it just says that the people in the church of Ephesus has tried them that say they are apostles and has found them to be liars. And Christ clearly says he has 12 apostles, yet Paul claims to be, the 13th or 14th?
Look, so in other words, 13 epistles signed by Paul are all written by a false apostle because God's so unmerciful that he wanted to put a liar right in the middle of his true word. Is that how you think?
No, that's exactly how the Satan comes in and deceives us, and that's why the Christ calls him the prince of the earth.
The only one deceiving anybody is you and your own inflated ego and your really ridiculous mind. You're out of control. I'm not surprised you're on this network because they never get anything right about the Bible. You're out of your mind.
Well, I'll tell you what, Keith. We'll be at judgment someday, and we'll see who's fair. You have a good evening now. Goodbye. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you can get persecuted when you bring out the truth. And you can read these verses at freedom-schools.com, the link to my name, Jerry Kirk. And you can do your own homework. You can make up your own mind. You can say, this is what the Christ said, and this is what somebody else said. And you can add it up. And by the way, you can do this for hours and hours. And I would like to offer to you a book that's called Jesus' Words Only. And it's by a guy named Del Tondo. And you can find that on the Internet. And I would like you to take a look and see what this gentleman out in California that I didn't know and have no idea that he knew me or read any of my stuff, couldn't have, because I didn't have anything up on any kind of website until after he did his book. And my stuff had been typed up for years, though. And people that know me know I've had it for years. But you can read what he has to say. And you can see what his research is. And you can actually go out there nowadays, ladies and gentlemen, and find a number of locations where you can find out about Paul. Now, let's move into the book of Acts. And let's take a look at the situation in chapter 7 about the stoning and the murdering of Stephen. And it said, and cast him out of the city and stoned him, and the witnesses laid down their clothes at a young man's feet, whose name was Saul. Now, you might go to the Farrar Fenton Bible and look in the footnotes right under chapter 7, and you will see that Saul, Paul, Malchus, is the chief justice of the Pharisee court. He is the high priest, the head Canaanite. You want to know why you got problems in the Catholic Church? Because they're run by Canaanites. They want to deceive people. And people go, my gosh, you're talking bad things about Paul. Brother Saul. Come on back after the bottom of the hour break. Let me point out to you that when I discovered this about Paul, I had no clue that Paul was anything but an apostle. I had heard Paul all my life and sounded like a good guy because I was just listening to preachers. And I really wasn't digging in to the book, to the playbook. But if you're not real sure about what I'm saying, why don't you do a little bit of history work? Why don't you listen to a term, Sanctimus Pius Papa? I did not say Pope, I said Sanctimus Pius Papa. And maybe you might want to do some research into the Catholic Church and find out who was the first Sanctimus Pius Papa. The first, in modern day terms, Pope. The very first God on earth of the Catholic Church. Well, Sanctimus Pius Papa actually was known as Caesar. I pronounced that a little different than Caesar, so that you could hear possibly the Tsar of Russia. Because Tsar meant, and Caesar meant, the living God. This is no big stretch. It's in black and white in the history book. Caesar became Sanctimus Pius Papa, which became Pope. And they are the Canaanite living God. What is the first commandment? I am the Lord thy God. You shall have no other God before me. Has somebody placed Paul's gospel in front of the Christ word? Well, let's see if he puts something in front of somebody else's word. I'm reading from the book of Romans. Where is boasting then? It is excluded. That doesn't sound too bad. But what law of works? Nay, but by the law of faith. Now, let's read what the Apostle James in chapter 2, verse 20 says. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? James says in verse 18, Yea, a man may say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You don't just get out there and say, Jesus. You don't just sit there and complain about the problems in your life. You ever heard the terminology? Lord helps those that help themselves. That doesn't mean stealing from somebody else. It means you have a problem. You identify the problem. You work on the solutions of that problem, and you get it done. We get up and we do something. From James, what doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he had faith and have not works, can faith save him? James says no. Paul says, therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Show me any verse, please, where the Christ says, I'm doing away with the law. You know, see, when the Father and I got together up there, you know, way back when, we figured out this law, and we told you over and over and over in the Old Testament that you had to keep His covenant, His laws, forever and ever and ever. But, you know, after about 3,000 years, the Father and I got together, and we decided that we must have made a mistake. We didn't know what we were doing. Well, it was just too difficult for you little guys down there. And you were out there just doing everything that we said not to do. So we just said, let's get rid of the law. We're going to send this Pharisee down there, and he's going to tell you, and we made a mistake. The Christ didn't have the guts, I'm supposed to believe, the Christ did not have the guts while he was there in person physically to say, hey children, the Father and I made a mistake, and this law is too difficult for you, so just go out there and say, Jesus. Just go out there and do anything you want to do that makes you feel good. If you want to eat pork, eat pork. If you want to work on the Sabbath, work on the Sabbath. If you want to worship idols of wood called paper contracts and have some government come in and tell you you get tickets for this and code violations and throw you in jail, tell you how to raise your children, take your children away from you, tell you whether you can divorce for no reason at all, and every abomination that's spoken of in the Old Testament, it's okay. They seem to have some abominations in the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church has been sued a whole bunch for millions and millions of dollars around the world for, let's see, what is it called when a man abuses a young boy? It's called pervert. It's called practicing homosexuality. But of course, nobody'd want to get in there and study any of Paul's background about that subject, would they? Nobody'd want to do that. Because, my goodness, could you actually find a verse where he's talking about, I wish you'd all be like me? Where's Paul's wife? Where'd he marry? Ever read his letters to the manservant for the emperor? Might be interesting to you. So, there's your false prophet, ladies and gentlemen.